Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kevin Dupree. I'm the Senior Director here at F&T Consultants. I'm joined by Martin Yon, who is a Senior 2 GP Consultant with our practice. We're really excited to have you all join us for what has become an annual event, our GP year-end closing training. I know that there's quite a few in attendance that we haven't worked with in the past, so just a brief introduction about our firm before Martin starts getting into the training content today. F&T Consultants, we've been around since 1995, and on the Microsoft Dynamics side of things, we're completely 100% dedicated to Dynamics GP. And our philosophy has always been, to be the best at one thing rather than good at a lot. And while Microsoft has other ERP solutions that they sell and support, we've hung our hat on Dynamics GP just because its prominence in the marketplace here in North America. Our firm employs 42 employees currently, and we're growing. But besides our GP practice, we also support kind of the rest of the Microsoft Dynamics stack, which includes Microsoft Dynamics CRM, SharePoint, which is also a content library and workflow manager that GP leverages, the BI or business intelligence tools that Microsoft has to offer, and then beyond our consulting services, we also provide post-implementation support through our customer care group that everyone can tap into. Even if you're not a client, there's just a minimal incident fee there. So with this, I'm going to kind of step out of the way, let Martin take over, and he's going to walk you through the year-end closing. We're not going to take voice questions as we're going through this webinar, but if you do have a question, you can post it. You should have a GoToMeeting console, and within that console there should be a question section, and so if you just type in your question, and that'll display up here on Martin's screen, and he'll be able to address that either right away or let you know that he'll be answering that question a little bit later on within the session. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Martin and enjoy the training, and we look forward to following up with each and every one of you kind of the next day or so. Martin?
Once again, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Hope you found find the seminar very useful to you, giving you some new tips and tricks to ease your closing process here. The manual that Jacob had sent out to you, you should have already received. We'll be using that throughout this training session. And the manual covers a lot of in-depth information, taking you through the period-end closing as well as the year-end closing. For today's webinar, we're going to focus strictly on the year-end closing portion of that. So one of the most important things with any of these year-end closes perspectives is to get a good backup of your database. Certainly if something fails, goes wrong during the closing process, it's very important to have that backup available to you to be able to roll back to and redo the close process. We're going to follow through here and cover the details of what to help you have a successful close. However, things can still happen, so we want to make sure you have a backup. So right now you should already have backup jobs that take periodic backups every night of your database and restore those. They get spooled off, whatever your company's backup scenario is. But we want to have a specific backup taken before your close takes place. And you want to make sure that's done with no one in the system at the time, and either you complete that yourself or have your IT assist you with that. And this backup should be stored separately from your other backups that happen on a nightly basis. So once that's completed and we've got some confidence there, the other thing to look at is doing any SQL maintenance. And again, this should be part of your normal weekly maintenance procedure set up on your SQL server. So I wouldn't expect that too much of this needs to be done, but at year-end close is a good time to check into this. One of the things in SQL maintenance, if you're following along in the closing guide, page 3, SQL maintenance means update statistics and recompile and stored procedures. And the instructions are in the guide here on how to do that within GP. You can also, again, have this as part of your SQL maintenance plan that your IT or database administrator takes care of for you. I'm going to jump into GP here. And we're going to go into a test company within a GP 2013 environment here. One of the great features you can set up within GP here is checklists. Off the Tools menu, go to each module, for example. You can create checklists for each module. And certainly, you can create these checklists to aid in your month-end procedures, your daily procedures, or in our case, maybe you're going to set one up for a fiscal year or a calendar year end. And again, fairly straightforward procedure to create your checklist to aid you in the closing process. Just a great feature you can use within the application. Another key area, just from a background perspective of our close process, again, is looking at our fiscal years and closing fiscal periods as appropriate. So from our Microsoft Dynamics Great Plains menu, Tools, Set up Company Fiscal Periods. In this company, we're operating in the 2017 year. And you can close individual modules. And the reason you'd want to close those is to make sure no one's posting transactions into periods in which you have completed the financials for. Again, if you needed to post things in there, you would need to open that module. And again, this is not a required function, but it's something we recommend to make sure that transactions do not post to periods of which have been completed. One of the things, important consideration here while you're in this fiscal periods window is if we're going to be closing the year, we want to make sure that the next year is already created. So given that this is I'll just walk you through the process of creating a new fiscal year. This one's set up for 2018. If we wanted to create 2019, we would literally just type in the box here, 2019, verify the dates, start and end dates are appropriate, which they are, number of periods, and we'll calculate. And that'll build out our new fiscal calendar. In this case, next year, I'm going to close them all because I don't want anything posted into next year. So that takes us through kind of the quick prerequisites to general closing, tasks in general. So from a perspective of closing the system for GP, we're going to cover the core modules here. There's a specific closing order in which to complete the close in, and that's covered on page 7 in the guide, starting with inventory, followed by receivables management, followed by payables management, fixed assets, and then all other modules. That would include, payroll, any other modules that you may have deployed within your system. So moving forward to our next step here is going to be to take a look at the inventory module year-end closing. So as with any of the modules, the most important thing is to post any transactions for the year you're going to be closing. So in this case, for inventory, we want to post any transactions that relate to inventory, any sales documents are invoiced, any other manufacturing-related documents are completed. Once that's completed, all those transactions are posted. Our next step would be to, if appropriate for your business, would be to perform a physical inventory count and post any adjustments that are needed for shortages, so on and so forth, any variances. Next step will be print any reports that are needed. And I'll touch on this again, your backup. Again, you could do a single backup when you begin the close process, or you could do backups throughout your close as you finish each module. Next would be, close the year for inventory, and then close the fiscal periods for the inventory series. And again, that's an optional thing, but something we recommend. So to prepare to close years, as I stated, we're going to make sure all our sales transactions are posted related to that. That would include sales order processing, invoicing, purchase order processing, inventory control, bill of material, and again, also manufacturing, if that was deployed in your system. And the reason why I want to make sure is that all those transactions post into the correct year before you close that year. If you have transactions you'll be doing for the following year, the next year, just make sure those transactions are saved in a batch separate from any transactions related to the year you're going to be closing. Next recommended step is to reconcile inventory quantities. And if you haven't done that before, that's under our going to our inventory pane and looking at reconcile. One of the things to remember here, this process can be quite lengthy. Clients with a lot of inventory transactions, this may take some time to do, so they would recommend just doing it during off hours, after hours, on weekend. And again, while this process is going on, you cannot post any transactions to inventory. You can't have any sales order transaction windows open, anything like that. At this point, you would print any of your physical inventory reports. And again, some of the recommended reports would be a stock status report. And one of the features, if you're using versions prior to GP 2013, is to set your printer. So tool, printer setup, select your printer. In this case, I don't have printers really set up in this dev environment. But in the case of GP 2010 or earlier, you're going to want to make sure you set your printer now before you can continue with any reports. In GP 2013, new feature, you can actually select the printer after you've started the report, which is a great new feature. But prior to that, you need to make sure you set your printer now. So maybe set it to your PDF driver that you have there so you can save all your reports to PDF. So for my inventory reports, some of the recommended ones to print would be a stock status report, historical stock status, a purchase receipts report, a turnover report, the transaction history report, as well as, more importantly, perhaps, serial number list and a lot number list. And at this point, once you've printed all your reports, next step would be to do your backup. And now we're on to actually closing the year, which is fairly straightforward for the inventory module here. So I'm going to go to routines for inventory and click year-end close. You got a few choices on what you want to do here. So first option is discontinued items. You can decide, you can check the box to remove those discontinued items. Certainly an effect of that is if those items are part of a bill of material or a component of a kit, they will not be removed. You can remove the sold lot attributes, and you can remove the sold receipts and change history prior to, you can specify a specific date. So a cutoff point if you want to remove those historical receipts, if that's appropriate for your business. And again, these are all options you can choose. If you're using an inventory valuation method, either FIFO periodic or LIFO periodic, you can also choose to update the item's standard cost into the current cost. Excuse me. So again, that's an option there. You would click Process. And what's going to happen when you click Process The effects of doing so is all your summarized current year quantities, costs, sales information is transferred to transaction history. The beginning quantity, if that's in use in your system, we updated the on-hand quantity. It's important for your turnover report. The quantity sold field for each item is reset to 0. The purchase receipts, if you've checked that box to remove the sold receipts, that would be cleared. Those purchase receipts are removed. Discontinued items, again, would be removed from the system if you check that box. Lot attributes, again, would be removed if you checked this box here on the sold lot attributes. And finally, if you chose to update the standard cost, that would be completed as well. So effectively, that's taking you through the close of the inventory module as our first module to close. Next module in our list of modules to close would be receivables management. And again, here the important thing is to make sure anything related to sales is posted, any invoices, any sales documents, all those transactions. And again, we would make sure we have backup. We would, in this case, we have to close a calendar year and a fiscal year if your calendar year and fiscal year coincide, with January 31st being the end of your year, December 31st being the end of your years. And then also closing the sales tax periods for the year. So once we've confirmed that all the transactions are posted, and certainly we can review that by clicking into our sales module here. Take a look at batches. And we post any batches that are outstanding as appropriate for a year. And same thing here as with regards to inventory. If you have transactions that need to happen in your new year before you have an opportunity to close the prior year, just make sure those are in separate batches. So we can navigate to sales under utilities here, reconcile, year-end close. And again, the important thing here is we have both a fiscal year and a calendar year to consider. If our fiscal year matches up with the calendar year, we would just simply click all and deal with it that way. And again, before we start this process, we want to make sure the report, we have our printer set to the right printer. And you have to make sure we've selected print the report and print it at that time. You can see in this system here, this system has not been closed, this new environment. If your system had been closed, it would show the last close date will be listed here as an indicator of when the last close process had been run. So again, we recommend if you're coinciding, we click all, we click print the report, and click process. Now the effects of doing that is it's going to, in your customer summary window, it will update that information to the we'll update all these things here, year to date. These will be cleared out. They'll all refer to last year's. This is on your customer summary. So year to date, and move those to the last year. Update all this information here for you when you perform the close. That takes us through the receivables management close process. Next one in the close checklist would be to go to purchasing. And again, same thing here. is we want to make sure we post all transactions of the calendar year. That would include purchase receipts, payables transactions, cutting checks that need to be cut, and that stuff's all been posted for your year you're going to be closing. And again, if you have new transactions for the future fiscal year, make sure you save those in a batch that's separate. A couple things in your payables area that we have to look at is, again, we have a fiscal year and a calendar year as part of our close. So we go to routines, year-end close. Again, we have both a fiscal year and a calendar year. And again, if your fiscal period coincides with the calendar year, you can click all. If not, we would close the calendar year and fiscal year separate times throughout the year. And again, they'll show you the closing date, last closed, print the report option. So before we begin the payables year-end close, one of the things we need to look at is the 1099s. So we can access it two ways. We'll take it this way. From the Microsoft Dynamics GP window, we go to Tools, we're going to go to Reconcile our 1099s, Utilities, Purchasing, Tools, Utilities, Purchasing, Reconcile. And we want to select our reconciliation we want to reconcile our vendors to update the 1099 information properly before we print those 1099s. And we would click Reconcile Summary Information and click Process. Next, we want to print the 1099s. We want to go to Tools, Routines, Purchasing, Print 1099. And we can, look at individual 1099s here, select which. So coming from this company, what the address is going to show on that 1099. Obviously, the federal tax ID would be filled in your system. Make sure we're looking at the right year, and choose, what selection criteria we're going to do. In this case, let's do all. And we would print the 1099. At that point, you want to make sure your printers are set up properly, you've got your form type properly set. In some cases, you may be using a third-party application to print the 1099s and submit those. Whatever the case is with your environment, go ahead and you're going to want to complete that for the 1099s. One of the things there, after you print those 1099s and look at them, you may want to edit those. Maybe we've got something that was misclassified. So we can look at up here under Cards, Purchasing Cards, 1099 Details. Also accessible from Cards, Purchasing, 1099 Details. And if we were to look at a particular supplier here, we can see their 1099 amount for the year was $10,000 selected. And we could look at individual months and see what the amount is there. And we can fix those amounts as needed here. Also new for 2013 is you can also edit 1099 details. So from utilities pane here within the purchasing series, update 1099 information. In this case, you can update a vendor, so change an entire vendor, all their transactions from all of them to a specific type of transaction. So for example, we can change the tax type. We can also change a box number for a particular vendor. We can also update just transactions. If we were to choose transactions here, and we can select a voucher number, range of vouchers, or a range of documents, or select to give all of the criteria. So I'm going to select a vendor and for a particular document date. And so I'm going to update this particular vendor for any documents today, update all the tax types to be miscellaneous and the box number to be box 7, non-employee compensation. So this is a great way to fine-tune your 1099 information before you submit those final 1099 reports. And again, this update 1099 information is a new feature of GP 2013. So once we've got those 1099s completed, happy with the results, everything's matched up, now you're ready to close the year. And again, now is a good time to make sure you have a good backup. If you've updated a lot of 1099 information, it may also be a time to take another backup, just to make sure you've got those changes, you don't lose anything. At that point, I'm going to go to, I can either go from routines here or tools, routines, purchasing, okay, my mouse won't work. Year-end close for payables here. And again, assuming that our fiscal year coincides with calendar year, we select all, choose to print the report, and again, making sure we have our printer set properly, and click close the year. Now the effects there are, we go to vendor summary, it's going to update your information, year-to-date information here, and it's going to update your additional. It's going to update your yearly summary for this vendor, rolling the year-to-date information to the last year, and all your year-to-dates would be 0 for your new fiscal year. As a final step, you can go in and close the periods. So again, like we talked about earlier, tools, setup, company, fiscal period, close the purchasing series for the prior year. And next thing, we've got to close the sales tax periods. So tools, setup, tools, routines, company, tax year-end close. And again, same precautions here. Make sure you have the report printer set properly. We've closed receivables, we've closed payables. We can go ahead and close the tax year. And again, tax year, depending on your situation there, we're on the calendar year. We click close year and click process. And then the report will print. So that takes us through our inventory, receivables, payables. Next major module to close is the fixed asset here in closing. So I'm going to click to the financial pane and take a look at our fixed assets information here. So fixed assets. So again, with regards to fixed assets, certainly we want to make sure that any transactions are posted. And if we went into transactions, fixed assets, any of your purchase activities completed or there, anything posted that you received through POP or receivables management, those fixed assets are indeed received and posted. If you have any asset additions to make, now would be the time to do that. Any changes, any transfers, any retirements, so on and so forth. You'll want to make sure you have run depreciation for up through the end of the fiscal period you're going to be changing, and that has been posted. And at that point, you're ready to print your reports. One of the key things here in fixed assets is reports. A lot of the reports cannot be generated after the fact, so you want to make sure you print those reports. So certainly from a reporting perspective, there is as many reports as you need to print. You'll want to print here. And some of the fields that will be updated once we close the fiscal year, it's going to update the year in your fixed asset calendar for you. It's going to change the year-to-date depreciation amount and year-to-date maintenance amounts field to 0. And it's going to copy some last year's, current year to last year data, so on and so forth. So from a reporting perspective, again, select as many reports as you need to generate. And the other thing you want to do is make sure your fiscal period calendar is set. So from Tools, Setup, Fixed Assets, Calendar. I mean, this is 2013, so it's a little, you can have multiple calendars set up. A new feature that was done in 2013. So your window in 2010 will look a little different. But if we were going to be closing 2017, we want to make sure the 2018 calendar is built, already exists for you. Certainly you want to also make sure the quarters are set as well. In this case, all this information has been built out well into the future. When we do deployments or setups, we usually build those calendars well out into the future just to make sure it's already set and ready to go. So again, if it had not been built, we would want to build that fiscal year calendar for the next year and make sure it's ready to go. Now we've printed our reports. We've verified the calendar is set up for next year. We have taken under backup if we've had to make a bunch of depreciation changes, maybe some postings. Never hurts to have an extra backup on hand to make sure we have a rollback position. So at that point, we'd go to routines. And again, all your fixed assets under financial, routines, year-end, and select which books we're going to close. And in this case, we've got several different books set up. And in this case, I'm just going to select them all, and I would click Continue. It's going to chunk away for a little while, and when you're done, it's going to be complete. So at this point, we want to take a look at any additional modules that you may need to close prior to closing the year end. And for our core financials, we won't have anything else to do here. Next step, we'll be looking at our general ledger closing, and this is probably the most key things for you to make sure that things are set up properly. So at this point, again, let's make sure everything is posted that needs to be posted. At this point, some of the steps would be reconcile and summarize the GL balances is what happens, accumulate throughout the year. It's going to transfer your open year profit and loss amounts to the retained earnings. It's going to zero out your profit and loss accounts balances after they've been closed to retained earnings. And it's going to summarize balance sheet accounts, bring the balances forward as beginning balances for the new year. So that's basically what's going to happen when you close the general ledger module. One thing to note is if you do need to post correcting entries to the closed year, you can still do so. You're able to post 1 year. So if we're closing, we're in January now and we're closing 2013, you still can post back 1 year into the historical year. You couldn't post back to 2012, but you certainly can post any adjusting entries. So from that perspective, you don't necessarily need to wait until your audit is done. Maybe, again, this your decision there, but you can post into that closed year with an adjusting entry, and it will do the proper adjustment to the retained earnings account. So for the general ledger close, we certainly would recommend that all users be out of the system. No transactions being posted. And from a checklist perspective, we're going to want to make sure that all the period ends, so we're in January, we want to make sure all our period end closes have been completed. We've closed out the month of December for all the modules, subsidiary modules, subledgers. Let's make sure that we have, completed all that, and then completed the year-end close for all the subsidiary modules as well. When you post any adjusting entries into the general ledger, close the sales tax periods for the year, and we have already done that. So tools, routines, company, tax year end close. We've closed out sales tax year. One of the key steps before we get too far into getting a close going is to go into Smart List and go to a financial series, look at accounts. And one of the key things is, if you'll notice here, default column is posting type of balance sheet. What we want to do is make sure that things are set up properly. Accounts that should be set up as balance sheet accounts are set up as balance sheet accounts. Accounts that are set up as profit and loss accounts are set up properly. If you close a year and an account is not set properly, it becomes it's very difficult to correct that error. Should that happen, certainly consult with us on that, and we can assist you. But certainly a good step, never bypass this check of looking at your accounts and verifying, indeed that, utilities expense is a balance sheet account. And that's actually a unit account if we look at it. Oh, excuse me, an allocation account. What if we scroll down and see that, yes, this makes sense. These make sense. Project expenses, is a profit and loss account. Makes sense. If one of these had been set incorrectly, it was just a matter of going in and correcting the posting type and saving that change. At this point, you'd want to print any reports after we verified our posting types are correct for the accounts. Printing reports, final detailed trial balance, printing additional financial statements, from if you're still using FRX or if you're using Management Reporter, print those reports. Certainly want to make sure that the fiscal periods are set up. We already talked about that. And again, these are within the closing guide here. It'll walk you through the steps checklist to make sure things are set up properly. Again, from tools, set up, company, set up, company, fiscal periods. Make sure indeed those fiscal periods are set up the next year. So after that's been completed, we have verified that the fiscal periods are set up. We've verified that all the other subsidiary modules are closed. We've completed the period end procedures for those subsidiary modules as well. We've verified all our GL accounts are set up properly as either a P&L account or a balance sheet account. Next thing we're going to do, take that back up. If you've made any changes since the last module you've closed. And again, these incremental backups are not required. You definitely should have one backup before you start any of these closing procedures. But an extra backup never hurts. Next thing we go to routines. So tools, routines, financial, year-end closing. So if you're in GP 2010, you'll notice this window is a little bit different. We have the choice now to maintain inactive accounts and select option there. And also there's going to be a progress bar down here. This gray area here will show a progress bar. So first thing we want to do is verify the retained earnings account. Is this indeed my retained earnings account set properly? Yes, it is. Great. Starting journal entry. We're in 2013 right now, so for next year, it's going to start at this journal entry number. And this will be your first, the journal entry from the close will be journal entry number 3488 in this case. You have the choice here to remove unused segment numbers. This can be something you can either choose to do or not. In most cases, we recommend not being able to do that. I see a question from Michelle. I'll address that in 1 minute here. Thanks for the question. And then also you have a choice to, now you have the choice to maintain inactive accounts. Prior to GP 2013, inactive accounts that did not have, with zero balances, would be deleted from the system. Now you have the choice to maintain those inactive accounts and then choose the logic regarding how you want those inactive accounts to be retained. So, for example, if you have an account set up for next fiscal year and you have a budget established for next fiscal year, but that account you have marked as inactive right now to prevent anyone from using that account, you can choose to just retain that account using this great button here with budget amounts. Alternatively, you can choose to maintain all inactive accounts so you don't lose any of those accounts. This doesn't remove anything related to transaction history. It's just removing it from your account list. So to jump back, a question from Michelle here posted, you mentioned the ability to post a journal entry to a closed fiscal period. Is the process for creating that entry different from that of a regular journal entry? Is there a separate audit entry function? So in this environment, we can look at what years are open and closed here from, I'm going to go back to the fiscal calendar setup again. So for 2013 or 2014, we're not a historical year. For 2013, it is a historical year. So as I stated earlier, we would be able to, right now we can post into that 2013 period. 2012 we would not be able to post into. So 2013 has been closed already in this particular environment. We're in a test environment here. So from financial, so we wanted to post something into 2013. Let's see this. And put this in a new batch here. So I've created that transaction. So I've got no errors in my batch edit list here. So this will post into that past period, and there's no additional actions required. All your audit trails that are part of normal transaction will occur. There will be an adjustment to retained earnings created in that as well, and I'm not going to be able to post it here, but Michelle, I can certainly send you an example of what that transaction would look like to you directly, and just kind of to show you what the audit trail is there. Just so you're aware of that, and when those circumstances come up, and how that transaction would look with regard to retained earnings adjustment. So certainly here back to our year-end closing. Here we've decided, made our choices, we've printed our final reports. One of the things here, year-end close may take quite a while. So for those of the users who are using GP 2010 or earlier, it'll be difficult to tell that the process is still running. So be patient with it. If you closed your year before, you may have an indicator, you may have kind of an indication of how long it takes to run. But you don't want to press OK again. I don't want to press close again. Try to repeat it. Just kind of be patient with it, which is why in GP 2013 they put this progress bar in. Essentially, once we've verified the retained earnings account, we verified the accounts are set up as posting types of balance sheet or P&L, we're ready to close the year. Like I said, we talked about what this will do. So roll over your balance sheet accounts as new beginning balances. It'll clear your P&L accounts and create a journal entry in there with the adjustment to retained earnings. So I would quick process close the year here, and that would take care of that. And again, the year-end closing reportable print. So again, we want to make sure that you set up your printer before you start this process. I know there's a few people on the line today that are using Payroll. There are specific tasks related to Payroll that should be completed. Certainly Payroll is a year-end task, and given that we're coming up on calendar year-end, you'll need to accomplish those things. So as with any of the other modules, let me backtrack for 1 second here. Now that we've completed successful close, take another backup, and you want to, again, archive that backup off somewhere that doesn't get destroyed. We recommend keeping that backup for at least a year. And should anything have gone wrong during your close process, if you've taken diligent backups along the way, you'd be able to restore and fix any issue and complete the close successfully the second time. Even with the best preparation, things do happen. Power glitch, your computer croaks. So those backups are very, very important. So for those people who have a Payroll, page 61 in the training guide. I got a quick question here. Let's jump back to that. So the question was, are any of the modules time sensitive when it comes to year-end closing? Certainly the most sensitive one is certainly your payroll. You need to close payroll before you do your next payroll run for the next year. With regards to receivables and payables, it's not super time sensitive if you're not using the. I'll show you the fields we're talking about here. So from a perspective of, we go to sales, customer, we look at their, sorry, wrong screen, apologize, summary. We look at customer summary. So if you're relying on these fields down here, year to date, last year, for business decisions, you probably want to keep those numbers accurate, you'll want to make sure that you do your close fairly time sensitive. In the same way on the payable side. And under purchasing, the vendor summary. Again, these numbers here we're looking at in this vendor summary, amount since last close. If you're looking at that information specifically here. With regards to your fixed assets, I believe you'd want to be closing that before you're running your next depreciation for the following month. So serial ledgers, certainly subledger, very important. If you want those numbers to be accurate, you'll want to get that done fairly quickly. But as far as needing to do it on the first or second day, certainly not important, as you're able to batch up additional transactions. GL can be closed later, but again, you can certainly close the GL and post those adjusting entries to the previous period, as we kind of covered here as well. So jumping back to payroll here, kind of as the final steps here, certainly there are some key steps in regards to closing your payroll, with regards to year-end updates, so on and so forth, to make sure you have the proper reports. Not really able to talk too much about if you're using any third-party products to assist with your period-end reporting for payroll, but from a CP perspective, what happens at year-end, your year-to-date fields are cleared. The payroll year-end wage file gets your information for generation of your W-2s and 1099-Rs. And so from a timing perspective, the year-end wage file must be created after the last payroll of the calendar year and before processing the first payroll of the subsequent year. So that's probably your really time sensitive with regard to closing, is specifically there on payroll. And if you had weekly payroll, certainly you have a small window to get that accomplished. So from a checklist perspective for payroll, first step, make sure you have the most recent and appropriate service pack payroll update supplied. Complete your final payroll run for the year. Build your year-end, complete the period end and quarter end payroll procedures for payroll. And again, just like the other subsidiary modules, receivables or payables, we want to complete the period end, and then before we move on to a year end. Build the year end wage file, verify W-2 information, make any necessary updates to the W-2 information, print your W-2 and 1099-Rs, and generating additional reports you need to provide with regards to submitting your payroll, your W-2s. Set up any next fiscal years that we didn't already do. Apply new tax tables if appropriate. And then close the fiscal period, again, in the payroll module. So, quite a few steps there, but certainly all manageable from a perspective of payroll here. So, first thing is make sure we have our year-end update in place. So from a Microsoft Dynamics menu, maintenance, U.S. payroll updates, we would choose our check for tax updates. And given a choice to automatic or manual, and you want to apply those updates if there were any available or applicable. And again, applying updates, you want to follow any of your standard procedures within your company environment with regards to updates after hours, backups, so on and so forth. Next, we want to look at from routines, and I'm in the payroll pane here. Routines, year-end closing is also accessible off the Microsoft Dynamics Great Plains menu. Tools, routines, payroll, year-end closing. And you would choose to create your year-end wage file. And you can note that you can install the tax update for the next year anytime after you process the current year. So certainly you'll want to apply that update, complete your close for payroll, then apply the updates for the next fiscal year, next year. So I'm not going to do the actual process here. Certainly, you'd be able to then edit W-2s if needed. And in this case, we don't have any because we haven't generated any year-end wage files. Here, you can correct anything that needs to be corrected. Add any 1099s, similar fashion. And then you would go to print. And in this case, we have not updated the tax information. We have not applied the payroll updates to this particular test environment, so it's not going to let us essentially complete the process. But we can go ahead and print our W-2s. And print the 1099-Rs as well. And some of you may be using third-party applications to assist with that, so you have to refer to that particular documentation. And you can print the statements as many times as you need to, and your ability to reprint those. And at the final step, you would apply any tax updates for the next year. At that point, using the same tax update procedure as we did last time. Which there finally brought up the window. You would get you choose, do you want to do automatic or manual? So you can choose to apply that tax update. And again, you would do this after you close the year to get the tax updates for the following year. So essentially, that takes us through our closing process. Certainly, once you've completed the close, take your backup. And again, you want to retain any of those final backups for 1 year is what we recommend, and store those outside of the location of your normal backups so they aren't inadvertently deleted or lost. At that point, you're ready to get to work in your next year. If there's any questions, feel free to type those into the question box in the session. We do have another one of our associates here that is one of our payroll experts. Dan, anything that you feel we missed as far as payroll closing?
Nope, I don't believe so. I think you covered the major steps. I think one thing I always like to encourage is just have it planned out on a timeline so that when your last payroll ends, when you can create your year-end wage file, and then apply your tax updates before your first pay run of the next year.
Yeah, certainly a very for those poor people that have weekly payroll runs. You got a small window to get that scheduled in. Any other questions from any of the attendees? Anyone else out there? And you do have Jake, I believe, had emailed the training guide to everyone. Feel free to distribute that within your organization, anyone who may be involved in the closing process. Again, the document covers your period-end procedures as well. At the front, talks a little bit about your backing up. Certainly, that's information you can share, as well as your maintenance procedures. You can share those with your IT folks to make sure that you've got some good backups going on a routine basis, as well as the weekly maintenance. I encourage you to use the checklist to aid you in this process. And certainly, please review the period-end procedures, and you may find those useful to your normal month-end tasks to aid you in getting through the process. If there are any other questions, it sounds like we're going to wrap up a little early today. I think I maybe went a little faster through some of this information than we originally had scheduled. But feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about any of the content we've covered today or any of the content in the training guide itself. My email address is here. You can certainly reach out to Jacob as well, who had sent you the invitation to the webinar. If you do encounter any difficulties during your close process, and you can certainly reach out to us. Our customer care team can assist you with that process. And I believe that covers it for today. If there are any additional questions, thank you for joining us and appreciate your time this morning. I'll go ahead and leave the session open here. If there are any other questions that come up, feel free to type them into the question box, and I will be available for the next 10 minutes or so. All right. Thank you, everyone.